What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Friday, everybody. And today is the premiere of Age of Disclosure from director Dan Farah. And we've been talking about the movie for a while. A couple things about that. I initially, and I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, the first time I ever heard anybody talk about a film, a documentary that was going to be like the shit was Andy from that UFO podcast. He was the first person that I heard talking about it. And that ignited my curiosity because, as you guys know, there's a lot of people that I really respect in this field. And one of those people is Andy. He was one of the first UFO podcasts that I ever listened to. Also, James Yandoli from Engaging the Phenomenon. Those two guys are like at the very top for me that I started listening to. I really vibe with their style because they're very balanced and they get along with everybody as far as I'm concerned. And when I heard Andy talking about it, he said that there was this film that he has been hearing about for a while. This was in 2023 when I heard him talking about this. And I just started like digging and asking questions. And at the very beginning, when I started the channel here, like the English content here, I didn't have that many connections. I developed them over time, and I've been very blessed and very lucky that people have responded well. And now I know a lot more about the film. After that, I saw Commander David Fravor on the Merged podcast with Ryan Graves. And you remember that clip, right?
Well, Dave, it was an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Yeah.
I think to your point, we are going to see a lot of changes in this area over the next few years. So perhaps we'll have you back on and we can discuss some of them.
You know, Ryan, I hope we do, and I hope I get invited back. I think, there's some stuff coming out. There's the documentary that I know you're a part of that's going to be coming out that I think is going to be game changing. There's been a lot of stuff said, but I think this is going to have the right amount of people. I'm not saying who it is or when it is, but there is something being put together that I think, hopefully it will come out and it'll be, that one thing that pushes it over that says, all right, we can't, the cat is definitely out of the bag, because I think there's going to be some interesting information that comes out in it. So it'll be good. I think it's an exciting times.
We don't support the X-File themes here at all. So, all right, Dave, thanks so
Twilight
much.
Zone. Yeah, thanks, dude. It's been great. Great seeing you.
So that clip, when I heard it, I was like, okay, so these are two of the three people that were part of the 2023 hearing with David Grush. And I think that the last hearing and that one, they're like as serious as it gets. And when I heard them talking about it, I was like, okay, so there's something really important and interesting coming. And I kept digging more, right? So as time went by, I realized what it was. Then the announcement came, and I have my own sources in media and in sports and film. So I had a chance to ask outside of the UFO community about this film and about the details of this film. And I got confirmation that the film was going through a bidding war. I also got confirmation that there were some issues between people within the film that included the director, issues that are now being denied because the film is the most important part for them. And I got a tip that there was potentially a release date, and I got to know who the streamer was. And I released the news, and that got Dan Farah unhappy about it. When I tagged him on X, he untagged himself, he untagged the Age of Disclosure account. That doesn't really bother me. I guess that they're used to people sending them emails and asking for a comment. But when it comes to scoops and breaking news, there are no rules for that. If you're respectful and you don't like go after people and do hit pieces, I think you're fine. So I don't need to ask permission to deliver news like that. So I dropped the news. I said that Amazon was the streaming service. And I said that at the end of the year, there was going to be the premiere. And like a week after that, they announced. And now we're here. So another aspect of that is that based on what I've been looking at and the people involved in the film, I can see that this disclosure narrative is of the controlled kind. And this started in 2017. Before 2017, there weren't really that many government officials united working towards disclosure. There were some that went through anomalous experiences and spoke to Dr. Stephen Greer, for example, but they weren't really on an official capacity with the government's permission working on this until 2017. And it's very clear by now that this is a really organized and very well planned out effort to release this information. And as part of the rollout of the film, there is the marketing campaign. And even I had doubts on which mainstream media outlets would accept to cover this. But today, after that hit piece from the New York Times, which was disguised as a movie review, but it was a hit piece, I think. There was a really cool article from Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal, sort of like a really beautiful close in the circle moment where they talk about the film and they preview it. And it's a really cool article, which I'm going to link in the description. That was the first major mainstream publication that did something. We already had Bill Maher talking to Dan Farah. We had an interview on Fox News a few days ago with Dan Farah. Today, CNN got in the conversation. And Jake Tapper was the one who spoke to Dan. And he said some really interesting things that I have also been talking about, which is when I released my news, the tweet about the date and the streaming service, I said that Dan's intention to release the film in this specific date was to make the award circuit. And what do you know? Jake Tapper said the following when he started his presentation and an interview with Dan Farah on CNN. Shout out to Wow on X. So here it is.
World lead. Unidentified anomalous phenomenon, what we used to call UFOs, are real. They are spying on and interfering with nuclear and military activity. They have crashed on Earth, and their non-human bodies have been recovered. And the U.S. government has been covering it all up for decades.
Just so you guys can understand how significant this is, because Fox News, as you know, it's a partisan sort of news media outlet. So is CNN. But so far, we had only listened to and heard a right-wing Republican news outlet that is also mainstream, but we hadn't heard a left-wing Democrat news outlet talking about this. And CNN entering the conversation and talking about this. And what Jake Tapper is about to say about the film, I think that is even further confirmation that we're dealing with a bipartisan issue, that there's a lot of people involved. You can say whatever you want about the film. You can say that it's a CIA operation, whatever you want to say. And I've already talked about the inconsistencies with some of the people involved in film and that amnesty stuff that even some of them I think are looking for. I've talked about that. But I think that the rollout that is happening right now, because it wasn't just CNN, it's the New York Times, CNN, News Nation, and we got like the major cherry on top at the end of this video that I think will be the final straw for this rollout. And it's perfectly timed, perfectly planned. And kudos to Dan for doing this. I think that this is going to get a lot of people interested in the movie. And this was really needed if you wanted for the movie to have an impact. And I think that the movie just premiering and people watching it and this whole rollout from the mainstream media, which is I think this is the most interesting and wider coverage that we've ever gotten about any documentary on UFOs ever. I can confidently say that. And this is going to definitely now, after today, going to have a massive impact. And there's a lot of people that are going to watch this. I can guarantee you that. And now, Jake Tapper's comments that he's about to say, I don't know about that. But let's see what Jake says, yeah?
Those are the arguments featured in The Age of Disclosure, which is a serious contender in the Oscar race for Best Documentary.
Say what? See, that was Dan's plan all along. He wants that documentary nomination at not just the Oscars, everywhere. And lobbying like this is going to get him that, no matter what happens with the movie. But let's continue.
Used this Friday in some theaters and on Amazon Prime. And it features a bipartisan group of 34 senior members of the U.S. government, military, and intelligence communities, all of whom go on the record claiming to have direct knowledge of UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. In a clip that is exclusive to the lead we're going to show you right now, then Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chair, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, explains how deep these layers of secrecy can go.
I think there's this assumption that
This is interesting because that's Dick Cheney and this is Bush Sr. right here. And presumably those two guys are the main secret keepers of this stuff when they were in power. And Dick Cheney just passed away recently. His funeral was, I think, yesterday or today. I'm not sure. But these two guys are like presumably at the very top of the secrecy.
Presidents can walk in the Oval Office on day one and say, all right, take me to Roswell, show me the alien bodies. I want to see the video of the autopsy. I want to see the whole thing, open it up. I think that really is a naive understanding of how our government works. Even presidents have often been operating on a need-to-know basis.
Just so you understand, this guy, when he recorded that, he was Gang of Eight. He's part of the SSIC. He presumably was one of the people who spoke with a lot of the 40 whistleblowers that David Grush spoke about at the hearings. And we've already seen Marco Rubio talking about this stuff on Fox News. There's a very famous clip where he talks about this. And now, given that he's now the Secretary of State, he's part of the presidential cabinet, him appearing in this film, I think, is one of the most important appearances in the film. And he has seen, presumably, those transcripts and the evidence that those 40 whistleblowers showed to the SSIC. So I just want to give you guys the scope of what Marco Rubio is going to disclose here. Even though more than likely anything he says, we've already heard within the UFO community. But still, his presence, the position he holds right now, the position he held in the past within the Senate, makes him a person that has seen some of this stuff and should know about this. And that's why I think he's talking about it in this film.
That's certainly true from a historic standpoint. The rationale, the justification was the president shouldn't know about these things because that way the president always has deniability. All they need is a nod in this direction or in that direction. But that begins to ramp out of control. Frankly, I don't even know if the president would know who to ask. You could go to the director of the CIA, nowadays the director of national intelligence, and ask them. And even that person may not know because those people rotate. But the people 3 layers underneath them that are there for 30 years, to them, it's like I've seen these people come and go. I have no obligation to tell them it exists. It just never percolates out.
Joining us now to discuss is Dan Farah. He's the director of The Age of Disclosure. So first of all, let me say I saw it last night, and it is riveting and fascinating. Congratulations. This is a subject that we've covered on the show, but you really, this is above and beyond.
Thank you.
The Secretary of State, then a senator, goes on the record there to provide a window into how deeply hidden this knowledge really may be.
This is a wild compliment from Tapper. Because if you guys know Tapper, I've seen him as a journalist for a while now, many years, and he tries to be very balanced, and he rarely ever gives a compliment like this. So this film clearly rocked him, and he's part of mainstream. So his voice really matters within mainstream media, and especially amongst Democrats. So him saying those things, I think it's really, really important for the film to get more attention from people who are not looking into this. And honestly, I think this is a really interesting rollout and a massive rollout. I joked earlier, I was like, what the hell, news cycle? Calm the fuck down, because yeah, it got really crazy over the last 5 or 6 hours. It's been wild.
Yeah, that Rubio clip sums up how significant the cover-up is. Every one of the 34 intelligence, military, and government officials I interviewed told me that not only is the public kept in the dark, but Congress is kept in the dark, and all sitting presidents have been kept in the dark.
So in the documentary, a number of officials go on the record to reveal a UAP crash retrieval program where technologies and even, quote, non-human biologics have been recovered. Officials say there is a secret war between the U.S., China, and Russia to try and reverse engineer some of these alien technologies from these crashed UAPs. How big are the national security implications here?
They couldn't be bigger. So this race, this secret Cold War race that our nation is in with adversarial nations to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin, the stakes are far, far greater than the atomic race. One of the interview subjects refers to it as the Manhattan Project on steroids. This technology could be used to cause significant destruction, but it could also be used to revolutionize the way we live. So there's a lot of pros and cons to this race.
So what Dan said just there, I do want to mention that even if disclosure happens, even if President Trump tomorrow or Saturday or Monday comes out and says after the film, non-human intelligence is real, we're not alone, blah, blah, blah. Even if he comes out and says that, regular people like us, if that doesn't have a significant change in our day-to-day lives, we're not going to care. The majority of people are not going to care if disclosure happens. I just want to make that extremely clear for people. And when we talk about this technology, it's one of the most difficult aspects of this, because even if this technology exists and it could change people's lives, do you have any idea how fucking difficult it will be to change everything, to replace the existing technologies right now, the fossil fuel industry and all that? How difficult that would be to just change everything? It would take a long time to do so. So I don't think that it's going to have like an immediate effect, but I think it would be significant if there's an official announcement, even if it's from President Trump. But mostly people are not going to have like a existential crisis about it, or there's not going to be really societal disruption about it. People are going to listen to that and they're going to go, okay, so we're not alone. I got to pay the rent tomorrow. That's what's going to happen. I think every one of you agree with this, but still.
One pretty shocking revelation is how these beings, whatever they are, have allegedly interacted and spied on nuclear and military sites. Here's a quick clip from the documentary.
We've had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours. They have.
So the people that are part of this film that will appear here talking about this are Bob Salas, friend of the show, Mario Woods, friend of the show too. He's going to be on the show soon, and others. But I think this is like the hook for people who care about politics, about geopolitics, and about war and all that. This is going to be the hook that people are going to pay attention to, because it is really concerning. Let's be honest about that. And this has happened throughout history in many instances. I forgot to mention Bob Jacobs, Dr. Bob Jacobs. I don't know this fine gentleman, but if I know him or I ever get to talk to him, I'm pretty confident he's going to also become a friend of the show.
Both deactivated and activated nuclear weapons with both the United States and Russia.
These are otherworldly things that are performing maneuvers that haven't been seen.
The UAP activity surrounding nuclear weapons is not a historic issue. It's an ongoing issue.
Yeah, the drones. That is still happening. And it's not just happening in the US, it's happening in the UK, it's happening in Belgium, France. Just last year, the Lake and Heath incident, and then the New Jersey incident, and Montana, on the West Coast, there were incidents too. It's still happening.
And there are individual testaments from people talking about UAPs that they saw hovering over nuclear missile silos. It's terrifying.
There's been reoccurring activity over our nuclear weapons sites in this country and other countries, and over our most classified military bases all over the world. And obviously that's concerning, because even if you are someone who can't wrap your head around the fact that this is non-human intelligent life and we don't know what their intentions are, the alternative is it's an adversarial nation penetrating our most secure airspace. Those are your choices.
Right. But I mean, as Rubio has said in your documentary and has said publicly as well, the Russians and the Chinese are not centuries ahead of us when it comes to this technology.
No. Secretary Rubio makes it clear in the film, as do others, that we do not know where these UAP come from.
Yeah.
But there is absolutely no reason to believe they are from the United States or another nation state.
So it's called the age of disclosure because you're basically saying we are at the very beginning now of this new age where this is accepted, no longer mocked, no longer stigmatized. So where are we going to be, do you think, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years on this issue?
I think that the officials speaking up in this film are kicking off an era where the U.S. government's going to step up and officially make it known that we're not alone in the universe and that the U.S. intends to lead the way on this. I think you're going to see a lot of legislation start to get full support in the House and Senate to drive us towards legal disclosure of what can be shared comfortably with the public. I think we're entering an era of unprecedented transparency and disclosure, and I think it has to happen now, as the film reveals, because the stakes couldn't be higher. We are in a very significant, high-stakes Cold War race with China and Russia, most notably China, and we know their intentions are not great.
Yeah.
And it's important that we actually win this race and lead in this new era.
And you note that Senator Harry Reid, the late Senator Harry Reid, was very visionary, a real trailblazer on this issue in Washington, D.C. And right now, Schumer, the Democrat, and Rounds, the Republican, are pushing for more disclosure, and they've been headed off at every turn. The Age of Disclosure, out this Friday, select theaters worldwide on Amazon Prime Video. Dan Farah, congratulations, and thanks for...
So, yeah, Dan, kudos, man. That's a great rollout. People are very excited. I do think that this China-Russia thing, I think it's significant, but I think that if this film does approach it from a fear-based sort of principle, people are not going to respond too well to that, because even though the nature of some of the interactions between non-human intelligence and government officials has been considered negative by a lot of people, I still do think that whenever this phenomenon engages with people, even John Keel talks about this, the phenomenon is reflective. It depends on your upbringing and the mind state you're on and what you've done throughout your life. That's how the phenomenon usually presents itself to you. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the phenomenon is bad or good. And that's consistent amongst people that I've spoken to who are very well-trained observers, scientists, military people, intelligence community people who agree on that, that there are some darker aspects to the phenomenon, but that has more to do with how reflective the phenomenon is. It's like looking in a mirror. And I know that Jay Stratton, for example, had very negative experiences with the phenomenon. I know that Jim Semivan had very negative experiences with the phenomenon. And I think that that has to do with them, not the phenomenon itself. Other people have had indifferent interactions with the phenomenon, which can also be considered for some negative. Dr. John Blitch, friend of the show, he had a weird experience with mantid beings that treated him like they were veterinaries and he was an animal. That's how he described it. So that's not necessarily positive, but there are also people that do describe experiences that were overwhelmingly positive. So we have to be aware that this phenomenon is not as black and white as we think. As long as we keep that in mind, I think that we're going to be okay. But if we want to treat this like a fear-based sort of issue, I don't think we're going to get too far. And I think that the other countries that are also involved in this and that have had crashes in the past and are trying to investigate this understand this better than the US does. I genuinely think that. Even though Russia, probably China, have also had negative experiences with this phenomenon. Brazil is another one, though. But they're not a superpower. But there's a lot of significant activity in Brazil, too. This long-winded thing was just to remind Dan Farah and everybody involved in that film that we can't make any assumptions or conclusions about this until we take more seriously the study of the phenomenon and it becomes more official and we really start talking to experiencers, not just from the military or the intelligence community who are also prone to spy on people, to deceit, to war, but also just citizen experiencers who have very different accounts of what happens to them. Very, very different. So we have to be very specific about that. I hope Dan understands this. I hope he does. I really do. I've heard that he likes talking to experiencers. So I do hope he does understand it. But just to close up, we got CNN, we got News Nation. He spoke to Cuomo earlier today. Tomorrow we have Timothy Gallaudet, Jay Stratton, Carl Nell, and potentially Grush from a separate interview that was pre-recorded back in September, talking to Fox News tomorrow with Bret Baier about the film. I don't know if Grush is going to talk about the film. I already discussed that in my previous video, but we have that. But for me, and I know there's a lot of people that are instantly going to jump and say, why would you say that? Joe Rogan doesn't know anything. I'm sorry, but Joe has the biggest platform on planet Earth. And whoever comes into the Joe Rogan podcast, they know that there's going to be a massive impact that they're going to have. Whether you like Joe or not, that's the bottom line. So whenever anybody goes in there, they already know that potentially their life is going to change because of how massive Joe is. So Dan posted this. That's going to drop today, just before the premiere. And I can't wait to listen to this entire conversation because I do like Joe's curiosity. And he always goes to the more skeptical side of things because even though he's said multiple times that he wants to believe, he's very skeptical. And I do like that. So I can't wait for this back and forth between those two and see what they discuss. But yeah, Dan Farah is going to be on Joe Rogan later today, and let's see what they discuss. I'm not going to be able to do a video about this one today because I'm going to be at the premiere and I'm going to be driving all day. So I'm sorry about that, but let me know after you watch this, what did you think about the interview in this comment section down below? And let me know what you think about the Dan Farah rollout and the mainstream media that happened on Thursday and Friday. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'll be reading everything. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, hype, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can also become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated. So thank you. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive, like Dan Farah, always. Bye.